Yes, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum. My name is Winston Robinson. I am a facilitator along amongst co-facilitators, Ms. Laura McClellan, Ms. Carlina Ivory, Ms. Jackie Walton, Edwards Walton, Ms. Natalie McElrath, Steve Johnston, our website editor, and our chaplain, Ms. Sherri Chisholm. And I said Mary, and Ms. Mary Johnson. Our forum runs from 8:30 to 9:45, at which we will pause for announcements from the audience. Announcements can be sent via email to Steve at stevejonston@tuesdayforumcharlotte.org. We always begin with a prayer, so we will ask our chaplain, Ms. Sarita, to lead us in a quick word of prayer.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
I promised last week that I would dedicate a few words to Dr. Pelosi and Richard McElrath. His sister is here, and he left a legacy with her, but she's just like him. I can remember when he asked me, should I run for the Board of Education? I said, of course you should. They're missing you. I said, but you know you need it in the classroom. He said, well, maybe I can do more there than I can in the classroom. I said, go for it. And of course, we know he won. Bless him this morning. He was a good man. Dr. Pelosi was a community activist. He was an author, and he was my friend. They were both good men. They made contributions to this forum, to the Morning Forum. Thank God for them. Thank God for their contributions to us, for us. Richard, I wish I knew a fraction of the math that you held in your little finger. Dr. Pelosi, I wish I could write as many books as you did, but I can't. That's over and done. Let's give them a few minutes of silence. We know that God is pleased with their contributions to their community. May they both rest in peace. Father, bless our country this morning, our city, our county, our state, and our neighborhoods, and our children everywhere. It's in your Son Jesus' name we all pray. Let us say together, amen. Amen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Retha. Yeah, so if we have any first timers, Faith, we ask, since you're not on the panel, so if we have any first timers, we ask that you stand and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Happy Tuesday to you. My name is Faith Anthony Mejia. I'm a proud native of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm part of the Leading on Opportunity team as a coordinator of operations and strategy, and I'm happy to be here.
All right, thank you so much. You dodged the bullet, Richard. But yes, again, Tuesday Morning Forum is for brief context. Tuesday Morning Forum has been a forum to get information out into the community since the early 1970s, persisting that long, and again, one of the foremost ways to distribute information to our community that is very local, that is very community oriented. So we never know who will come in, we never know who is who or what their associations are, but it's very free flowing, very very I was going to say slang words, but never mind. But very, very free going, easy going. Let's just say easy going. But again, we have a larger online audience, so we'll see this as well. So you might get some questions from that space. But yeah. But our guest today, Faith, is the very dynamic, the amazing team that leads an organization that has been in Charlotte for a few years, but they have done extraordinary work. This is Leading on Opportunity. And I will allow these guys to introduce themselves shortly. Following their presentation, we will take questions from the audience. your hand, please raise your hand for questions and we will receive them as we acknowledge your hand in the order that we acknowledge your hand. Questions should be questions. They should be no more than 30 seconds long. If you had your hand raised for a few times, we will prioritize other hands before allowing to ask second and third follow-up questions. So that is the forum. Thank you guys for being here. We'll start with Richmond. If you mind, Sherri, passing that microphone to Richmond. So we can, you can turn it on. There we go. Hello.
So, hey everyone, so I am one of the newer members on the Leading Opportunity team. This is my 9th month here, and I'm the Davidson Impact Fellow with Leading Opportunity. But all of my work experience has been in the Charlotte nonprofit sector the last 4 or 5 years. And my work really leans into doing research and also some policy analysis with both Tanya and AJ. And so with that, I'll pass it to Sherri. Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Richmond Brodigan, the Davidson Impact Fellow. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sherri Chisholm. I'm the Executive Director of Leading on Opportunity.
Tanya Jameson, I'm the Director of Civic Advancement and Leading on Opportunity.
Hey folks, good morning. My name is AJ Calhoun and I'm the Director of Research and Impact for Leading on Opportunity.
And then Faith introduced herself. Faith is also a part of our team. Faith leads our operations work. It is a real pleasure to be back with you all today. About a year and maybe some change ago, I had the opportunity to share who I am with you all. It was via Zoom. I was fresh off a baby. I think I shared with y'all that I just had my first child. I moved here from Detroit with my husband to make it a home. And I also made some commitments around what I would be working toward and that I would come back and share those updates. So that's the purpose of today. As Winston shared, we've intentionally kept it more free-flowing. With one exception, we have developed a data tool that we want to share with you all. So AJ will go deeply into that and show you some examples of how you all might be able to use it in real time. A couple things that I want to share about Leading on Opportunity. So over the course of the past 2 years, we've completely rebuilt the team. Who you see before you is all new as of my joining Leading on Opportunity as the second executive director. And it was very much so my goal that we create a team that is reflective of both in terms of lived experience, passion and commitment to the city. And in doing so, we also put a lot of effort into making sure the board reflected that as well. I was initially established as an organization that would be 50% community and 50% corporate. When I joined, it was no secret that we were about 100% corporate. And so I'm very thankful that we have more community representation. We've added Winston Robinson to our board and also Dr. Divine Goldman Hunt, who leads the Black Child Development Institute, to make sure we're getting the voices of community in the room. And so that's how we've changed our governance and our staffing model. In terms of how we're approaching our work, there were a couple big questions around like who is leading on opportunity. So it came out with a big splash, as I understand, and there have been a lot of questions about who we would be and how we would do our work. And so I want to clarify that. So Leading on Opportunity is an initiative at Foundation for the Carolinas. In that structure, our goal is to help nonprofits and funders work together more effectively. So we don't provide direct service. We do not give out large major grants, but we see ourselves more as a community consultant, helping those that have been doing the work for many years better articulate their impacts, and then helping funders hear the voice more directly of community as they make those funding decisions. And so the team will talk to you about that today, and then we will leave lots of time for questions should you have some, and I'll make sure to direct that back to the leadership committee for them to facilitate. So I will hand it to, did I miss anything? No, okay, I need keeps it straight. I'll hand it to Richmond to talk a little bit about our strategy work stream within our work.
Yeah, when we sat in order, that might have been a little helpful. But yeah, thanks, Sherri. So when it comes to strategy, our approach is to try and align key stakeholders across the community towards actionable goals that improve economic mobility. So basically getting people on the same page. And currently our strategic focus is on college and career readiness. As we know, there are lots of organizations across Charlotte that do the amazing work day in and day out of helping students, but at the same time, there are also gaps in communication, silos that form, and groups that convene, sometimes just for the sake of convening without, goals or direction, right? And so what we try to do is reduce that fragmentation and increase the level of cooperation, primarily by scaling up some of the efforts and increasing the connectivity of college and career access organizations. And one of the really interesting ways that we've done that is by sort of helping in the formation of the Crescent Coalition. So the Crescent Coalition is a collection of 9 college and career readiness organizations, several of which are Black-led, like the Academy of Goal Achievers and CYC. And they help underserved students on their journey from middle school to high school to college and into careers. Now, this group of organizations came and reached out to us asking for help in terms of creating a platform for them to collaborate. Before that, they had been meeting kind of informally, and they needed some help just structuring, what would the group look like, what were some of the goals that they wanted, how would the meetings run, etc. So really, all of the amazing ingredients were there in the first place. We just provided the sort of top of the line kitchen so that they could all kind of coalesce together and collaborate even better. And speaking of collaboration, they've had a number of successful events this past school year. The organization, the coalition is still only less than a year old. But this past fall, they had a FAFSA night where about 100 students in both English and Spanish speaking sessions went to Central Piedmont, and they learned how to complete the federal student aid form, which, as we know, is really important and vital because studies have shown that students that complete the FAFSA form are about twice as likely to attend college than those that don't. And it was really amazing to see because we had 100 students on a Tuesday night with them and some of their families, and to get that level of attendance on a Tuesday night is, I'm sure many of you know, not an easy task. So it really spoke volumes to the kind of trust that they have with the students that they work with. And then they also hosted a college tour last February with about 60 students who went to the HBCU and CA&T, as well as UNC Greensboro, where they got to meet with faculty and current students and learn about wraparound services and the resources that are available to them and that can help them navigate college and be successful when they get there. So we've been really proud of the accomplishments that they've had just in the last year, and we're hoping to continue supporting them as they go into this next school year, potentially going less and less so as they become more and more sort of independent. And yeah, that represents just sort of one piece of the work that we're doing, and I'll pass it to Tanya, who will talk about our policy.
All right, so when it comes to policy, over the years, I've been here at TNB doing politics. I've been in city council and seeing many of you all there discussing, highlighting the same issue sort of year after year. One of the reasons that we are in this stuck place when it comes to some of these issues is because of policy and the lack of policies that increase people's access to economic mobility. So when Sherri hired me, we knew that she knew that she wanted to do policy so that we could really change and improve people's chances of getting ahead. And so the way that I approached policy for our organization, it wasn't that I just looked at the task force report and said, we need to change this policy, that policy, and fix this policy. I really wanted to work with people like you and the different nonprofit organizations who've been doing this work for a long time, who had boots on the ground and really know these issues inside and out, and work to identify what are your policy priorities, and then try to align your policy priorities to the business community's policy priorities. So when you think about the business community, they're interested in how do they keep their workforce and how do they get their clients. So if I can elevate what you all are talking about here in the community to what the business community needs, we can try and leverage the influence that the business community has, especially when it comes to the state legislature. We know most of our local leaders, so I'm really thinking about it on a state level when I refer to how we can bring in the business community. So I'll give you one example around childcare. So as you know, the pandemic highlighted the lack of access to childcare and the unaffordability of childcare. And so businesses, for the first time though, were really beginning to feel it after the pandemic started to wind down. They were trying to get workers back in place because a lot of childcare facilities closed down. And so business community was like, okay, we have an issue. And so it gave me an opportunity to work with the childcare providers and the advocates to say, what are the actual policy priorities? What can we advocate for on a state level to increase people's access to affordable childcare? So I work with actually people on the state level advocates, as well as people here locally, to identify the policy priorities and actual bills that we want to get the state legislature to pass. There has been, the biggest ask we have right now is for $300 million to extend the compensation grants. These are federal grants that came down under the child care subsidy, and it gave teachers a raise. Providers were able to give teachers a raise using this money because they were losing teachers to like Chipotle, Target. They were starting to pay like $15 to $20 an hour, whereas a child care provider was still only paid $10 to $12, and so they were losing their teachers. Compensation grants allowed them to actually stay in the classroom, but those grants end in December. So the ask on the state level is that they extend those compensation grants, allocate $300 million to 2025 to extend the compensation grant. So here's how the state legislature works. You know, we have a supermajority now, Republicans. None of that money was included in the budget for the House budget that came out a few weeks ago. So now all eyes are on the Senate, and we hope that the Senate will include the money in their budget. And so we had worked with local businesses. We held a virtual panel about maybe a month or so ago to educate the business community about why the system is so broken, and then how they could advocate on behalf and contact key legislators to try to push the needle forward when it comes to allocating funds for childcare. As much as we love our local delegation, they're all Democrats. We are now controlled completely by Republicans. So it is critical that our business community reaches out to the key Republican legislators who have the influence to make those decisions and allocate the money that we need. So that's one way that we approach policy. When we're still talking about childcare, I'm also interested though in finding out what can we do on a local level with the city. Usually when we talk about childcare, we're only talking about the county. We sort of say it's a health and human service issue and the county does it. But I think the city does have a role to play. So this summer, I'm planning to, Richmond and I are actually in, Faith, we're gonna recruit you too, probably. And we're gonna go out and do a childcare listening tour and talk to providers and find out what does it take from start to finish to open a facility and run a facility, and then where are the pain points? And looking at figuring out where there's alignment between different organizations, where they have shared common issues, where can maybe the city step in to make it a little bit easier? Maybe it's zoning, maybe it's regulation, but where are areas that the city can also help increase access to childcare? So that's on our list to work on this summer once we get through this first general session. So I will be reaching out, and you all have my information. I'll give you my cards too. So if you know people who run a child care facility or their providers, please pass along my information to them, because we definitely want to hear from them and get a broad, diverse group of people that we're talking to. I will now pass it along to AJ. He's going to talk about the Opportunity Compass, which is our data visualization tool, to tell us how we are doing when it comes to economic mobility here in Charlotte.
Thank you, Tanya. So the Opportunity Compass, as Tanya said, is a tool that we developed that brings together information that already existed publicly, but in a way where it maybe was inaccessible to people for whatever reason. And so what we wanted to do is provide an easy access point to all of that information. So folks who are interested in the kind of the information about their communities, or folks who are leading work around these issues, could have quick and easy access to it. The Compass is a tool that's structured in the same way as the task force report was structured, and so it uses 3 determinants of economic mobility. That's early care and education, child and family stability, and college and career readiness, as well as 2 cross-cutting factors, which is the impact of segregation and the benefit of social capital. And so what I'll do here in a moment is pull up the compass on our website, walk you through the information, and give you one example from early care and education, since I know many of y'all are either working in that space or know folks that are working in that space or maybe have interacted with the system for your own children. But before I do, I want to give just a little snapshot of how we built the tool and how we included community voice in the tool, because I think it's really an important aspect to why we do our work, but also the way in which we intend to do it at Leading on Opportunity, and particularly the way that we want to include lived experience and expertise into our data work. I think oftentimes people think about, people live over here, and data lives over here, and the more you do of one, the less you do of the other. And we thought that that paradigm wasn't going to be helpful when we set out to build our tool. And so, although I think we have many good ways to get data in our community, we didn't have a way to do that that was nested in what community knew was the way to move forward. And so Tanya and I worked together last summer, or no, this was last spring actually. The time flies. And we went out north, south, east, and west, English and Spanish, in person, online, and we asked folks, out of all the things that are in the Leading on Opportunity report, what are the things that you know from your own experience, from the experience of your neighbors, that move the needle the most? And then we gathered that information through a survey tool, and we used it to weight the opportunity compass so that the things that mattered most to the community, the things that folks knew moved the needle the most, actually makes the most impact on the data in our tool. And in that way, we want to promote the Opportunity Compass as a tool that's used by all sorts of folks. As Sherri mentioned at the beginning, primarily oriented towards nonprofits and funders. And we knew that if we could build in community knowledge and expertise into the tool and actually tune the tool so that it moves the needle the most when we work on the things that are priorities for folks out in our community, that would then bring those voices into the room in a way that maybe was new. Because I think so often folks who are civic leaders in our community look to data to say, what's the truth? And we said, well, if we can build community knowledge into that tool, then we'll be able to bring the truth in that way through this tool. So that's just a little bit of context of how we built the tool. And now what I'll do is I'll pull it up and show you how it works. This is the Leading on Opportunity website. It is, if you've been to it in the past, it's refreshed and renewed, thanks to a partnership with Lloyd Visuals, a Charlotte-based company some of y'all may have worked with before. You can come up to the top bar and see there's this link to the Opportunity Compass, and click here and scroll down and click Explore. There's a lot of information on this homepage about how we built it, why we built it. If you're the kind of person who really wants to dig into the data, we've got this thing called the Indicator Glossary that's like 40 pages about how we did the math. If you're a math nerd like myself, that might be interesting to you. But if you just want to go straight into the data, you can come to this page and it'll go into full screen. And here you see all of those aspects that I mentioned from the task force report laid out in a way that we hope offers a kind of 60-second, 30,000-foot view of the landscape of economic mobility. And so over on the left, you have this little, what we call thermometer, and it says on a scale of best to worst, how are we doing overall? And inside of each of these thermometers, you'll see there's little arrows that point up if conditions are improving and point down if we need to lean in further in this area. And on the right, it then breaks that out according to those 5 aspects that we talked about a moment ago. You'll see social capital says forthcoming. And that's because when we began this work, we knew that we would only be able to visualize information that already existed. And also around things where we had a common understanding of what do we mean by doing work in this area. For social capital, there's some information that we know exists, but oftentimes it doesn't tell a complete story. And so what we wanted to do before we just built something on the basis of what our team thought was right, we wanted to spend more dedicated time making sure that we got the data correct for social capital. So expect an update to the tool in the future that includes that information. But for today, we have information on 33 what we call key drivers of economic mobility. These are things like homeownership. These are things like the 6 indicators of early care education we'll talk about in a minute. Things like graduation rates and disconnected youth. And you can export each of them, and they're organized into these kind of buckets here. I'll go today into early care and education. I'm just continuing the theme that Tanya began. You can click on the thermometer, or you can click on the icon. Really anywhere will take you where you need to go. But here you can see it kind of uses the same visual language as the homepage. So over on the left, you see this thermometer that tells you overall for early care and education. How are we doing in this area on a scale of best to worst, with that arrow pointing up or pointing down? I think it's important to note that the goal of the first iteration of the compass was really to tell the story of the first 5 years of the work that we have been doing as a community around economic mobility since the release of the task force report. So the data here go from 2015 until the end of 2019. So really we see this as a pre-pandemic baseline. We know that it's important to have access to those pandemic data, but for a number of reasons, when we were in the process of building this, starting late 2021, we didn't yet have full information about the pandemic, and it's still coming in the full picture about the pandemic. And we also knew that if we didn't have a clear picture of what it looked like before the pandemic started, that we wouldn't really know the impact of the pandemic itself. So that's why we chose this window of dates. And you can look in the future, when we release the next update, we'll have information that goes through the pandemic. We wanted to make sure that the kind of pace of the release of information was slow, because we know that these things don't change every week or every month or even every year. This is work that took us a long time to build these problems, and it will take us a long time to address these issues. And so we wanted to make sure that we release data at a pace that encourages us as a community to think about these things over the long term. So what I want to do now is dive into one of these, which is the proximity to care bucket. When you click on any one of these areas and you go into an individual, what we call key driver, it shows you now not the sum and then all the constituent pieces, but it shows you over on the left the one thermometer for this driver, and then it shows you data on that driver over time. And then at the top, you can see kind of 2 or 3 panels, sometimes up to 5, that disaggregate and break down this indicator in whatever way makes most sense for the indicator. So sometimes it's by race, sometimes it's by economic status, sometimes it's by geography, sometimes it's in some other way. In this case, we break down proximity to care into 2 buckets. One is early care and education, which is the youngest children, and then school-aged care. And so we bring together those 2 pieces of information into this summary view that you can see. And if you ever want kind of a quick description of what you're looking at, you can always hover over the chart at any given time, and it'll give you this little key takeaway. So if you look on this 2016, you can put your cursor over it, and it says, in 2016, the rate of households who lived within half a mile of a care center was 64% overall. Now, one of the things that was really important to us when we began building this tool and throughout our building was that overall is only so important. We want to be able to tell the story for particular populations that are being affected by these challenges. And so if we go into the early care bucket, specifically, we can see this broken down by race. The way that we did this analysis was we looked at the number of care centers in any given neighborhood, and we used the kind of neighborhood model that the city and the county use, which is based on kind of community folks giving input on what the boundaries of neighborhoods are. So it's a little different than the federal neighborhoods, and it's more customized to us in Charlotte. And then we looked at the largest group of folks who live in that neighborhood. And so that's how we did this disaggregation. And so what you can see is you can look at the dynamics of different groups over time. So you can see the same sort of thing. If you hover over, you can see in 2018, the rate of Black households within half a mile of a care center was 74%. And we know even at this level of depth, it doesn't tell the full story, but what we wanted to do with the compass was put people with the beginnings of information that would help do the work more effectively and help particularly folks who were already doing the work, maybe folks who are working in the early care and education space, tell their story more impactfully, particularly to open the door for smaller organizations to greater access to funding, things like that. We know so many organizations don't have the resources to have a full-time person who just focuses on data. So it was really our goal in building this to equip people with access to information in a quick, easy, and relatable way. So if you want access to this particular information, you can come down to the bottom and there's this little download link and it'll give you all sorts of options. You can download it as an image and print it out, or you can download the data and manipulate it yourself in Excel, or you can pop it right into a PowerPoint. Again, our goal was to make this easy, accessible, and ready for use for anybody who wanted, anyone who wanted access to the information. So that's a little snapshot into the Opportunity Compass. We'll, I think, send a link out to it afterwards, but you can always access it on leadingonopportunity.org. And that's what we're gonna share.
Thank you. And so that's what we have for you in terms of our update. A couple things that I want to make sure to bring back. We're a new team with a renewed focus on economic mobility. We do our work as a community consultant, providing data, strategy, and policy. Tanya will be doing a listening tour of early care providers this summer. So if you know of someone we should talk to, please give their information to Tanya. And these are people who have a standalone center. And I, in particular, am very interested in early care providers who run programs out of their homes. My child went to a home facility and oftentimes they're left out of the conversation. So I want to make sure to include them. And yes, we are here in the community. We are very thankful that you all have had us now twice. And I will hand it over to the facilitators to let us know how to handle questions.
Thank you so much. We have 3 in the room. We have 2 online. We will go ahead and start with those questions in the room. And first we have Ms. Edwards-Walton.
My question has, the information that you shared, did it already incorporate the meetings that you had early on where you received input?
Yes, it does. It does include that information. As AJ shared, I'll do my best to explain it. We started with the community input and then paired that with quantitative data to develop the tool that you see before you today. So this does include the community's perspective. Did I answer your question, Sherri?
I meant the second time around.
The second time around.
When you came to like our office,
Right. And you had the community come in at that time and you were presenting the comments.
yeah, no, at that point it was already, at that point they'd already built the At that point, when you all came back, that was just basically a way for us to introduce the Compass to people like you and the different nonprofits that we were hoping will be able to use the Compass. So it was already created by then when you all came back.
So I guess what I'm asking is the input that came from that meeting. Because I think I attended 2.
Yeah, you did.
And folk had a lot of suggestions.
Yeah.
So
I understand what you're saying now, Ms. Jackie. This is the same data that was presented the first time to you. The feedback that you provided, we're collecting for the next iteration of the tool, which will be a couple years from now.
okay.
Now I'm on the same page. Okay.
Thank you.
Carrie. Let me get my mic second.
Thank you. You talked about identifying stakeholders. How do you do that? And how, I know that there is a big problem lately with employers trying to fill jobs. And I'm wondering, how are you involved in connecting educators with the employers and finding out what the needs are of the employers for the educators to prepare? Is that clear?
Yeah. Yes, it's clear. No, we're not specifically involved in connecting employers with educators and figuring out what the employers need and how educators need to be preparing their students. The Charlotte Regional Business Alliance is really focused on that when it comes to higher education. And then also the city of Charlotte has the Higher Charlotte. The city of Charlotte has the Higher Charlotte initiative as well. And so they're trying to work with educators, the CMS, and then the post-secondary education to prepare students for jobs. So, yeah. So the way that we talk about in the policy world, especially when it comes to preparing people for the workforce, is we look at it as the wraparound services and support that people need. So too often the conversation has been around how do we get people into the jobs of today or the jobs of tomorrow, and the focus has only been on workforce development. But if somebody doesn't have a place to send their child for childcare, if they don't have a stable place to live, if they don't have access to transportation, it doesn't matter how great your workforce development program is, they're not going to be able to take advantage of it or be productive even when they get in the workforce. So we look at it as the wraparound services.
All right, I'm gonna take a question from our online audience. This isn't specified to anyone. How do you settle on a focus area? How much time will you spend on college and career readiness? And how will you know when your work is completed?
That feels like a Sherri question. So I can answer the first question around how we landed on college and career readiness. When we came in and started the analysis and began to have conversations across the community, we heard that there had been at least some recognizable progress in early care and education as it relates to the increase in pre-K seats. Now, we know we need more, but there had been a community-wide effort to make that happen. When we also looked at the family and child stability, affordable housing has been on the top of our community's mind for a while. So there were collective, coordinated efforts in those two buckets. There wasn't such a thing when it came to college and career readiness. There were pockets of things happening in different places, but an additional coordinated effort needed. So we decided to lean in there as one of the first reasons. Also, and I'm very open with folks, it's no secret that people have been waiting for something to come from Leading on Opportunity. When we look to where we can, the most robust data is available, it's in education. Now, still, it's much slower than folks want it. At most, I love AJ says this, at most kids graduate, with the exception of Jackie, once a year, sometimes twice. We need to see that data over several years to know if things have become impactful. So that's kind of what it's the two primary reasons why we landed in college and career readiness. One, there wasn't a coordinated community effort. Two, we knew the data would be available and that we could provide information on it. Also, in focusing on college and career readiness, we added the 5 college presidents. I will say this over and over again, we see ourselves as a community consultant. We are not the direct service provider, so we shouldn't be saying what the focus should be in college and career readiness, but those who lead the work. So we've been working with the college presidents, with Danielle Frazier, who leads Charlotte Works, to have them inform us as to what it looks like to do this work effectively and then help them facilitate that work well. We know we'll be here through the end of the year, and then we'll make an assessment collectively with the college presidents and the folks represented on our board, how much longer we'll focus on college and career readiness.
And can I also add, Sherri makes a really good point. And when we were doing the Compass conversations, this work doesn't end. It took a long time for us to get to this point. And typically, often here in Charlotte, we want to just check a box and say we did this. And that's not the way that we are approaching this work. So yes, we may at some point pivot to another area where we are focusing on, but the work in college and career readiness is not going to ever end. And so we have to stay vigilant. We see that on a national level as we look at just what's happening, that we take our eye off of it, we get complacent, and then we go backwards. And so we can't afford to continue doing that cycle.
That's great, Tanya. Thank you for that.
Gary.
Yes, I guess I'm gonna have to go down there on that list a couple times now with these questions. Because it's interesting, man, hearing these kids out here like on Tuckasegee and Freedom say, I don't believe this American dream is for me. Mm-hmm. So we resort to what we see in our communities. So I want to see, but you said earlier, social capital, you haven't really got it up there on your compass yet, but you have some information. What information do you have? And what are you trying to identify in terms of social capital for you to be able to put that on there?
Yeah, I'll start, and then I'll actually let Richmond fill in a little bit more because he's doing a lot of the work on social capital. What we currently have access to is information.
Just speak up.
What we currently have access to is information on what's kind of traditionally thought of as civic engagement. So we have how many people turn out to vote, and who calls 311, and who serves on municipal boards, things like that. it's a slice of the pie. It's not social capital in its entirety. There's been research done recently that's continued to corroborate the impact of social capital, but it's with data that is anecdotal and gives like one view into it on the importance of connection across economic groups and the importance of cohesiveness among community. But that's a type of information that that is a one and done research study in the same way that the kind of original Chetty study was kind of one-time thing. So we're trying to think now about new ways to measure that maybe don't even exist yet, but would help us tell the story in a better way, and particularly tell the story in a way that would incentivize community organizations and funders to partner effectively to move the needle in this space, kind of like we do everywhere. But one of the things that Sherri says all the time is we're in the business of leading an opportunity of taking information that already exists and kind of visualizing it and making it accessible to people. We don't have the power to create new information. And so what we want to do is provide kind of well-scoped, we need this particular piece of information, and we need this particular piece of information, but it's going to be up to researchers in our community to generate that and report on that. I don't, do we want to go into
researchers under your staff, researchers, what do you mean?
Well, here, let me
Yeah.
I'm going to try to reiterate what AJ said. So when it comes to social capital, we know it's important and there's very little data on it. And so the data that has been conducted is through national researchers with lots of money and lots of access. For example, the most recent social capital data that has come out was led by Raj Chetty out of Harvard, who had access to tons of Facebook data. That's very difficult to get access to, something we would never have information about. So now what we're saying at Lead In on Opportunity is, based on what we've heard from Charlotte, what would it look like to collect social capital data here? So that's the first step. What is social capital? So how do we define it? Then how do we measure it? And then where we come in, how do we make sense of it? So there are two layers that are missing. Actually, all three layers are missing, but the first two we need to answer before we can share any information on it. And so what AJ is saying is where we are now in the process is beginning to define what it could be. And there are three areas that are leading us now. And I'm going to ask Richmond to just describe what those three areas are.
Yeah, so I guess, when it comes to social capital, it's difficult to measure in terms of what's publicly available. It's typically stuff that's top down. Like people see, a lot of times people use like crime rates or the number of congregations or the number of nonprofits or like voter turnout in communities to assess social capital, but we know that those aren't really strong measures. And so something that we're trying to do again is look into like built environment, strength of, like doing surveys of communities to see like, are there people and institutions that they can reach out to that provide the kind of resources and things that they need? And that's not done on an annual basis in Charlotte. And so if we can scope that out and have it so that a research group in Charlotte, like UNCC or like Urban Institute, could do that on a yearly basis, we could start to see the health of, are people in Charlotte, are they connected and do they have resources available to them? Because that's really at the end of the day what social capital is about, right? That you have people that can, provide mentorship, provide guidance, and give you opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't. So that's something that we're trying to work on and hopefully include the compass as well.
With average median income of a zip code versus type of careers and jobs of that community.
Something like that for sure. So one of the things that we know would be informative, but data that we don't have access to is, I believe AJ and Richmond have been talking about economic diversity of a classroom. Because economic connectedness informs who your network is, if you can get a job, who you can call for a favor, where you can connect to people in community. So we look at classrooms to see not just schools, because people lift up one or two schools as the example, but within classrooms, are students working together on projects who come from low or high income environments and then maintaining those relationships. What the national data showed us about Charlotte is that we have economic connectedness, but on very surface levels. So we come together, hopefully I'm not freestyling too much, but we come together and maybe a concert or a community convening, and then we go off into our own communities. We don't maintain those relationships. We aren't necessarily going out to dinner, playing a game together. Our kids aren't having play dates. Those are where rich relationships are built. You know, at its essence, I think social capital is who can I call for a favor, right? Like who can I call to get information? And so we're trying to figure out ways to assess that.
Careers of kids in a certain school. What type of careers that the parents have for those kids? That's
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a working class neighborhood. My mom worked in a charter school and worked with someone whose kids traveled internationally. I was like, I think your daughter should do that. They were not talking about that where I grew up. That's how I started traveling internationally. So we know the power of bringing folks together. It's just it's very sensitive information. So how do we get access to it?
All right, Gary, I let you have a whole conversation. Yeah, I know. Really back in. Before we go to Ms. Edwards and back to Carrie, I have another question. Actually, two more online, but I want to ask this one first. Do you offer courses for small nonprofits to show us how to use Compass data and how it's supposed to help us?
Yes, we do. Thank you for asking. We're actually beginning May 22nd will be the first one. Invitations are actually going to start going out today. But we can provide access to this information for any kind of organization, nonprofit organization that wants to access the Compass data, wants to use it in their work. We are providing a series of workshops that will help folks learn about how they connect to the Compass. So what is your organization's kind of secret sauce, how you move the needle, and then we'll provide back language that you can use that talks about how you make an impact on the key drivers in the Compass. And hopefully that will be a way for folks to not only see where they show up in the Compass information, but also for leading an opportunity to learn more about all the many organizations that are working across Mecklenburg County to move the needle so that we can tell a story at an ecosystem level about, well, there are this many organizations doing work in this area, and here's the particulars of this, that, or the other. Our goal is to, in the same way that people talk about building a diverse, portfolio of stocks, we want to have a diverse portfolio of organizations that are all in their own particular way, seeing unique problems and solving them with unique solutions. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish next. And a very timely question because we will begin later this month with that work.
Thank you so much. So before we go to Carrie, Ms. Edwards, then Gary, we're going to start with Ms. McClay.
My question is for Richmond. I just wanted to know what's the demographics of the 100 people that you gathered to take to fill out the applications? Can you give us that information?
Yeah, all right.
This is for the Crescent Coalition?
Fast tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't have the information on me. I think Maria Diaz, who runs the Crescent Coalition, would have that, but primarily because of the students that they serve, and person that can attest to that too being there was that it's primarily Black and Brown students. I'd say majority Black and Hispanic across all across Charlotte, across West Charlotte. Basically students who are in need of public system. But yeah, I can get back to her in terms of that.
All right, Carrie.
Regarding caregivers, I work with the YMCA, and I know that the YMCA stepped in with a lot of caregiving when we were on lockdown and schools were closed. So I would like to connect with you about that. And also, I have another connection with the school that you might be interested in. It's bilingual preschool. So are these just in-home?
Oh, no.
Okay. And are they just childcare, or can it be preschool as well?
It would be both. Childcare or infant and toddler, and then also pre-K as well. Yes.
Okay. The Y was working with the whole spectrum of kids, age-wise as well. So is that?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll exchange information with you because I'd love to figure out who I need to talk to at the Y to get more information about it. Yeah, because they would have a perspective on just what the barriers and challenges are for sure.
All right, Ms. Walton. Ms. Walton.
Yes, I wanted to know, when you're looking at some research, have you looked at the, state of Black America with the National Urban League or the United Way and their Unite programs? Because many of those different neighborhoods have done surveys in their individual neighborhoods. Or have you contacted Mecklenburg Ministries?
I'll start by saying all of our information is Mecklenburg specific. So when it comes to pulling information for the Compass, it's all information that would be reflective of the residents here. And then I'll hand it to AJ to talk about any of those sources.
I think the sources line up well with that. We're connected to Mecklenburg Ministries, although I'm sure we could be better connected to them. We're connected to the United Way as well, and so know a great deal about the work that they're doing with United Charlotte. Laura serves on our board, so we talk to them often. And then
Here's the last part.
Oh, the CEO of United Way is on the Leaving Opportunity Council.
Laura Clark from the United Way is on our council, so we have continuity between our organizations.
But
they will be here Tuesday, 23rd. So you can also direct your question to.
We have not read the national report that you mentioned. Most, as Sherri said, most of our work, we're looking at things here locally, but I would love to read if you think it would be useful for us to know.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, we would love to see it.
All right, Gary.
Yeah, man, a little earlier when you were speaking about social capital, you just made a notion about disconnected youth. Can you define that a little bit?
So disconnected youth, we define as youth between the ages of 18 and 24 who are neither in school nor working. It actually may be 16 and 24. Anyway. And right now we have that classified underneath college and career readiness, since it's about school or working. And so
you said 16 to 24.
That's the
classified under college and career readiness.
That's the area.
Like in our determinants.
Yeah.
That's where we classify it.
The bucket we put it inside of. So that data is already available on the Compass. You can explore that.
You want to put an age range like that towards workforce development or something like that?
It falls under the same bucket, right?
Yeah.
College and career. Our label for college and career readiness, and like the career portion, includes workforce.
Okay. So there are 9 of these key drivers inside of college and career readiness that are things like graduation rates, academic preparedness for college access, first-year persistence in local institutions. Disconnected youth is one of those areas. There are a number of others that are there, and each of them is, like the indicator we shared earlier, disaggregated in whatever way makes most sense for that indicator, and you can view the information over time. So some of them are specifically 16 to 24, some of them are high school students, some of them are middle and high school students, some of them are college students. Each driver is built for the population we're trying to measure.
What about the kids that go to college?
So we're hoping to be able to tell that story through career and technical education. We have not been able to get access to information about career and technical education to this point, but we have a wish list of things that in that long document, we have like a big list of things that we know are super important, but we don't currently have data to measure. And this goes back to the point that Sherri made earlier about, we can say we need this piece of information, but if the information doesn't yet exist, we can't create it.
Yeah, I would be honest, it's not like we're trying to hide the ball. There's just not good data around folks who don't go to college. Like, it's much more robust in college institutions, but there's no consistency required across workforce development programs or direct career entry programs. It's something I know the county is trying to figure out. It's just not there.
Although we do have data on apprenticeships.
That's true.
Great.
The closest, yeah.
All right, we got a question from online. If we know it as a society, why not just do it without having to mine the data? We know our industries do not offer equitable pipelines. Why not just call them out and make them fix it?
Is that a question?
That you said there's supposed to be a question.
Why not?
Why not?
Why don't you?
No, I'm like, look, I'm just reading.
Yeah. I mean, all we can do is highlight the information. The data is, unfortunately, I hear what you're saying about, why do we need the data? But data is really what helps people, what makes people want to move the needle. Think about it. before the Chetty report came out back in 2014, you all knew of the issues that were in the community, but no one was listening to you. It wasn't a surprise to you. But once Chetty came out with the data and put it in a report form that said Charlotte is last in economic mobility, then everybody's like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? So you need the data, unfortunately, to get people to move to action. And then we can't just make the corporations didn't necessarily care about childcare until it started impacting their actual workforce. So you do need the data. That's what helps to move the needle for those who are in power, because when it starts impacting their bottom line, then they're going to pay attention. We can scream about it all we want, but until we have the data and then they see it and they feel it, then they don't want to do anything about it.
All right, Gary, you want to go back?
No, I'm good right now, man.
Ms. Rita.
Thank you guys for presenting this morning.
Thank you.
But I didn't get the time and the place for your May 22nd meeting.
Oh, I don't know them all off the top of my head, but it's like 6 or 7 days in May and June, and it's like multiple times a day.
Can we provide that information?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can get that to Steve, our website editor, and we'll make sure we broadcast that to our following. All right, Gary.
Is there a cost?
No.
And how do people sign up?
It's all free. People can sign up. Right now we're sending to a list of maybe 200 nonprofit organizations that we have this database. The goal is to try to spread the word as widely as possible. The sessions are really designed for executive directors of small nonprofit organizations and like development directors, program directors, or research directors for larger organizations. The goal is, as the questioner asked online, how do we connect the work of nonprofits to this? And so we want to equip nonprofit leaders to do that. We'd love to continue offering it at even greater scale. In this first round, the goal is really to meet folks who are nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, so it is free. It is for, as AJ said, focused on smaller nonprofit executive directors or larger nonprofits, their data or development person. Space is limited. So the team only has so much capacity. This is our first time doing it. So we'll do it, we'll refine it, and then hopefully we'll release it again. And then Faith will make sure that those dates get to Steve and the leaders to make sure they're out to y'all.
Multi-sessions or one session?
If you come to one session, you will have received everything.
I have another question online if anyone else in the room does not. Okay, all right. And I guess, again, just to any one of you all, from what you have found, being so close to this data, what are some of your personal thoughts on addressing these systemic solutions?
My personal thought and belief is that this is no easy fix. I think that we have, as a community, have an urgency around fixing things that are negative in our community. When it comes to issues like this, it took us generations to get in it. It's going to take us generations to get out of it. The example that I come back to all the time as someone who started her career in education, Brown versus Board of Education passed 1954. Schools were not completely desegregated to the early 80s. If we would have stopped in the 60s or 70s, I don't think that probably would have served us well. So I think that when I think about my personal beliefs around doing this work is that we have to orient that we will be in it for the long haul and that it's not a quick fix. We will get better, we'll learn some more information, and there'll be more things to do. That's it. I don't think that I know there's no silver bullet, there's no easy button that we haven't pressed. It is hard, long work that we'll be in. I know I will be in for the rest of my life, and I may not see the fruit of the seeds that I plant now, but hopefully they will be true for my daughter or the generation after.
Anybody else want to take a stab at it? All right. Anybody else have a question?
I have a question. Since I remember your being on Two Sport, how have you found the community in Charlotte as far as embracing what you all do? Mm-hmm. How is it? Share it.
Yeah.
You can share it and you can do it individually. I'm just interested.
I'll start. I think, I think for the most part, they've been really hopeful. I think I'll be honest, people were disappointed. I wasn't here when the Chetty study came out, but I heard a lot about how it was one of the biggest like corporate community partnerships that had ever hit the community. And there was a lot of hope and promise about what would be. And then when I joined 4 years later, people were still looking for what that would be. And so when I came on, there were understandably, folks were skeptical. They were optimistically cautious. I'll separate, I'm saying a lot, but I'll separate the organization and me. I think people were happy to see that there was a Black woman who was taking the reins of the organization that was for people of color. And I'll say that the forum, the community all wrapped their arms around me and were cautiously optimistic about what could be possible. As we built out the team, I think that optimism has only grown. And when I think the community, whether it be neighborhoods, nonprofits, or corporate organizations, have really invested in us in this next phase of the work for us to continue it forward. It's hard. Like, I'm not gonna say it's not hard work, but I do think that Charlotte is a place that wants things to be better. We're just learning how to do that together more effectively. Does anybody else? No. Yeah. Gary has a question.
All right, Gary, come on back.
Where are you from?
I'm from Detroit.
Are you from Detroit?
What up, though?
My family from Pontiac.
From where?
My family's from Pontiac.
Oh, really?
I'm born and raised here, but my mom and dad.
I saw a Michigan license plate in the parking lot.
Nah, that wasn't not.
Okay.
I'm sold to Charlotte, but I'm family grandparents.
Is that your question?
Yeah, I was asking.
Okay, all right. Here we go. One more. Wait a minute. Are your corporate partners also utilizing the findings from this data to make organizational or structural changes?
Yes. So we started with the community and we internalized the data we gathered in those community sessions into the Opportunity Compass. And I think as I was introducing it, I said our goal is to build a tool that helps folks not only have a common language for talking about economic mobility, but then have common definitions that are grounded in data that help us move in the same direction together. There's a large group of CEOs in Charlotte called the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council, about 25 organizations, and they have adopted the Opportunity Compass as their primary measure of progress for our community. So what that means is that the 200 or so folks that we went out north, south, east, west, in person, online, in English, and Spanish, and internalized that data into the Compass, those voices are being listened to when the Compass is used. So there's always more work to do in this space, but I think this is one way in which we want to build a tool that is used by folks in power that brings community voice into the process.
That actually, thank you for doing that. I want to ask a question based on the information you just gave. Charlotte has a broad history of being a town of silos. Can you just talk about some of the efforts you're doing to bring, talent from across the city together to kind of tackle this problem as a team instead of individual groups?
Well, the way that we've been approaching it is that we're in some of the various coalitions and silos that exist. And so one of the ways is really bringing attention to what another organization is doing. I'll give you an example with I'm on the Nest Commission, which is trying to come up with an anti-displacement strategy. But at the same time, the United Way is working on a Home for All, which is the group that is working on preventing homelessness. So making sure those two groups are talking to each other and know what the other one's doing so that we're not duplicating efforts. So a lot of it's really has to be one-on-one in the different rooms that we're in. AJ's in a lot of the CELC meetings in the different work groups. And so because we get to sit in these different rooms, we have an opportunity to highlight what the different coalitions and silos are doing, bring attention to it, and make sure that we are either aligned or figuring out also where's the gaps. But it's going to take time because Charlotte is used to doing it the way that it's been done before.
And the other piece I would add to that is just, it is my goal that whatever we claim or work towards doing out in the community, we're also doing in our organization, like we're keeping our house in order. And so we restructured the board to have more community voices. So to make sure that and this is really important, I think before when we talked about having community on the board, it felt almost like community for community's sake, but we needed community expertise in particular areas. Folks who understand the issues of housing, people who understand the issues of early care, such that yes, they show up in their brilliance, but also their expertise gives them authority to push and pull if they need to. And so that's an area that we've started that we'll continue to refine at home.
Thank you so much. We have Ms. McElrath, Ms. Walton, and then Gary.
The most action-oriented thing that we've talked about is the policy change. But unfortunately, speaking as a Democrat, we're at a big disadvantage. What's your feeling on whether the Senate is going to pass that?
I am cautiously optimistic that it will make its way into the budget. And then if it does not make its way into the budget, it could potentially go along as a standalone bill next year, but we just don't know. The Senate has, the people who are talking to the lobbyists who are actually like down in Raleigh are not sure if the Senate is going to want to do the $300 million price tag. And so one of the things that we want to do as an organization is figure out, okay, if the Senate, if it does not get into the budget, this money to keep the teachers making a livable wage, what can be done on a local level that we can also, make it at least more economical for people to stay in this field. And so that's part of what we'll look at like this summer is like, okay, how can we potentially maybe, talk to county leaders to see, is there money available here locally to help with this? And then what are some other local solutions that we haven't necessarily thought of? So right now, all our attention is on the state legislature. After we find out whether or not there'll be money allocated, then we'll start looking at, if we need to, what are also potential local solutions. The challenge we have in Charlotte is that we have, Mecklenburg County has money, and so we can sort of fix our way out of things, but that doesn't help the entire state. And so part of it is looking at how can we do things that will impact the entire state and not just Mecklenburg County, because if we continue just to foot the bill for what the state legislature won't pay on our own, then the state legislature continues to just not to pay that and give us the resources that we need. So we have to fight on the state legislature so that we will get the money that we deserve, and same with these other rural counties. So we're going to see.
Ms. Walton.
I think Sherri answered my question. It had to do with what changes you may have seen in the politeness in Charlotte.
Yeah, I'll leave my answer where I left it, Ms. Jackie. I don't know. I don't think there's much more for me to add. I had a lot to learn. I'm really open with people about that. And coming from the North and in Detroit in particular, we talk to each other in a certain way that it's not Charlotte polite. And so I had to adjust. Part of being successful in a community is understanding the culture and how things happen. And so I have been working on what does it look like to stand in my values, but also meet Charlotte where Charlotte is.
It's so cold in the D. But, I'm going to take the liberty to ask the question, kind of throw a lob. What are some of your outreach goals, and how can the community meet you there to make sure the information needed is provided and spaces to do that?
Keep inviting us to events. The way that we have structured our outreach is that we didn't, as you all noticed, we didn't have a big event saying like there's a new leading an opportunity. Come see us, come meet us. We've been going out. We've been invited to different organizations and invited us to speak, invited us to do presentations. AJ and Sherri do a lot of the presentations, but we've been going to people in the community, sharing what it is we do, how it is we work. So keep sending invitations to us, and we will get out to as many as we can to share what it is that we're working on.
Okay. All right, Gary, you got your.
Yeah,
and then Ms. Carlin, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess it's a great piggyback off of what Winston asked a little earlier, but you brought up the CLC.
I saw your face when you said that too.
All those guys. But I'm curious to know, when we talk about opportunity, when we talk about that age range and that demographic that's not necessarily for college, what are you doing with the CELC to create jobs and opportunity for these kids? Because as I alluded to earlier, when these kids say, I don't think I can achieve the American dream, you're dealing with about 25 individuals who can do it like that.
Yeah. I can't say that I personally or our organization is like responsible for the work that they're doing in that space. They have a working team that they call workforce
Y'all
development.
y'all are working together on that front?
We're attending the meetings, but I think that we're not, I mean, we employ the people you're seeing in this room.
Yeah, so AJ attends all of the meetings. I attend them pretty regularly. Our goal is to, as we see it, is to inform the CELC on what the issues are as identified by the community, which is we're using the compass to do that. We don't have any say in telling them what exactly they should do. Would I love for them to act more swiftly, to more directly put money where Sherri thinks that should happen? Sure, but that's not the role that we play. So we see it as our responsibility to get clear on what the issues are as identified by the community and provide them with that information. That's where as far as we have within our power to take it. And so AJ has done that and his team through the Opportunity Compass, because what they're asking us is we've invested all this money and what has it added up to? And we can say, well, the community told us through the compass, this has been the result. So maybe this is what you need to think about through your next iteration of investments.
But Gary, I want to go back to your point there, because you're like, you got 25 people in the room and they can just do it like that. But that's the same mentality they have, is that we've got all these programs, we have this workforce development, we have all these jobs. Why can't we get these people to jobs? These people have other issues too that are not being addressed, which is why, bringing up childcare, just as a small example, is equally important, because if this person doesn't have access to childcare, it doesn't matter what job you have. So thinking about and trying to elevate to the CELC in the meetings that I sit in on is these wraparound supports that are critical for people to take advantage of the opportunities that are out there. Like, it has to go hand in hand. We can't just think just because there's a job, just because there's a program, people are going to automatically be successful if we're not giving them the other supports that they need. And so that's where policy comes into play, and that's where it's also important to really keep this conversation going about it takes more than just a job. People need more help than that.
Right, economic income, affordable housing.
Right, exactly.
Affordability is relative.
Right, and can you get affordable housing here in Charlotte? So if you can't get affordable housing here in Charlotte, that means you're moving further and further out of the city limits, and you have to have reliable transportation. So it's all.
And I'll say, I know that they're actively trying to figure it out. What information are they using to make those decisions? So we feel like that's where our power and influence is providing more robust information so that they're not just sitting the 25 amongst themselves making the decision, but using information that's informed by the community to make those decisions.
And again, just for the not only the room, but for our online audience as well, if you could please give just a bit more context to CELC, what that acronym stands for, and who is kind of it made up of.
So a lot of communities have these. What it's called here is the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council. And it is made up of the foremost CEOs in our area. So the big organizations that you would think of that make up Charlotte, their CEOs or maybe their direct reports, they come together once a quarter to talk about what they're going to do as a collective to improve community issues. And so they have, supported things like affordable housing. They're doing a lot of work now with CMS in their support of things going on. And so they came to us and said, we've been doing this work and we want to get smarter at doing the work because we want to stay in the work. So what data can you provide us to help inform those decisions? And so that's how we're working with them now. Does that help, Winston?
Well, let's see. Ms. Carlene may have the question.
I really want to be here, and Tanya, I really want to get with you because every time I hear about leading an opportunity, I hear something different.
Okay.
And I want to understand, because I think it's up to us to go out and to convey the message. And I don't have a clear message. And if you don't have a clear, you can't convey it. Now, you talk about the individuals who are the CEOs. Who are they? And how, why, who are they? And you say they represent. Who picked them? I mean, they probably have money, but I get to the point where, and I know, I'm pretty sure I have an inkling of who some of them are, and I know they're good people. But who picked them? And why? And I just want to understand. And is there any way where we ever get an opportunity to communicate with them? Or, as grassroots, or you're here to say, this is what we really want. Do they really know?
sometimes people like that live in a different world. I'm sorry, y'all know what I'm talking about.
Let me to start with that.
I missed it, and maybe Tanya can fill me in, but I do want a private session. I need to know. I want to know.
To that question, I believe in January we had a presenter by the name of Rocky McGregor, and Rocky is an executive at Novant. However, he became the executive on loan for CELC to forward the messaging of that organization.
Rocky very well.
And he-
Almost every day.
And he will answer your question. And I think of who's on CELC.
Oh, I know, he's a but to answer my question about least an opportunity, I talked about, a lot of things. I want to talk to her about leading on opportunity.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought it was about who's on CELC.
Yeah, I know that too, but she'll tell me.
Yeah, it's publicly available. CELC has a website with all of the CEOs who are members on their website. And I want to clarify that we are not members of the CELC.
Who has a website that's
The CELC, the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council, they have a website that lists all of their members.
and like I said, I think I know a lot of them. They're good people. I know I'm not supposed to be doing it. The one who that corrected me. But I want to know how often do they talk to grassroots people like me.
And you want to be straight up. I mean, come on now, the thing that is that I like about our organization and where we have the opportunity to sit is we get to be a proxy and sit in Miss Carlenia. So hold on. So one of the things that is that we do get to be sort of like a proxy and be able to bring the concerns that you all are mentioning to these different CEOs and organizations. And that's the best that we can do because, realistically, they're not coming down to Tuesday morning breakfast they're just not coming out into the community the same way that we are. And so we do have an opportunity to bring your voices and your concerns to people who sit in those rooms who get to make the decisions. And we have to figure out how to best leverage the opportunities and access that we do have as grassroots organization to get the word out.
I understand that.
Go ahead, Mrs.
My concern is, and good representation. I don't know a couple of you, but good representation. My question always is, how do you get back to us?
We're here. This is our second time coming to you all, and I specifically go to a lot of the different meetings too.
I'm not saying you, but we'll talk.
All right.
I want specific. I like dot. Okay.
And I believe in context as well. So just again, just to mention it, as
Let's call for coffee.
Oh, okay.
that's all. It is sitting on the table 20 minutes. But for context, as Sherri mentioned, CELC isn't a concept that it's just
we don't.
unique to Charlotte, right? But it's in other cities. However, it is to be noted that with Charlotte being the banking center, the financial center, it is the 25 CEOs are not only a representation of Charlotte's business leadership, but national business leadership. These are some really big wigs, if you will. So just to put that, it's not just like mom and pop shops. These are multinational organizations. So yeah, Ms. Carlini, I see you. Okay. All right. So
statement, and just to reiterate the fact that what you all are doing for us this morning is helping us understand what you all do. And that is really, that's what we're all about, is sharing this information with the community. And some of us may not be completely clear, and don't see the action that you've already taken as things to be done. But we appreciate your coming back. But it needs to be a little bit more, it needs to be spread. What you're doing really needs to be a part of almost all of these organizations that are already established, so they can know and understand. Because there's so many, but we appreciate it because that's what we do. We just invite you so you can share the information with our listening audience and for us, because most of us are community activists, we engage in the community, and we need to know these things, so we can share with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And Ms. Walton has a question, but before we go to Ms. Walton, I'm just going to take the liberty to say what they didn't say, or say it in a manner that isn't as buttoned up and polished as they articulated. So for people who have grassroots nonprofit, I know you have one, I have one, we're in a community. And one of the most challenging aspects, at least for me, where I have the most insecurity is grant writing and looking for support in organizations needing and requesting the fine-tuned data to make yourself a better candidate. Data mining and getting the data is very expensive. So, for organizations like the one I founded, and I'm sure a lot of others, we have those reluctancies to really lean into what we need from that data because it's so expensive to find. And, ultimately we know it in our gut. We know where the need is. So the compass, what it does is gives us access where we don't have to spend tons and tons of money to find what we already knew in the first place. So, I use it. Thank you so much. And I'm going to put it out there. July 15th, we might see Leading on Opportunity at a Vibe Outside. Taking place, for a second time. Saturday in July, one of the greatest festivals on earth. Ms. Walton, we're going to let you conclude with questions, and then we're going to go back to the panel and let each one of you have a closing thought.
I was going to say, many years ago, there was an organization called Campus Connection. That,
a great one. Great organization.
And that model we may not be able to have that model like we used to have. But I'd love to talk to you all about it. But you were saying there were about 9 groups. I'd love to know those 9 groups, because I don't know that they've ever even heard how great Campus Connection was. And if there are, I served on the board for many years, but if there are things that some of them can pick up and do. I mean, we're talking about 150 kids a year going to 30 HBCUs, meeting with presidents, deans, provosts, financial aid, the whole bit once they got to those schools.
What gets you connected with Jackie?
And I think that's a thing in culture that might not be understood on paper. Like for HBCUs, if you just get there, they'll find a way to work out the money. However, you don't know what you don't know. So if you think I don't have the money for college, you just sit back at home. You gotta listen. That HBCU financial aid magic is, I'm a product of it. I know. So, but thank you for your question. Again, we're going to allow everybody on the panel to close with and just share some thoughts.
Thank you all for inviting us here. I really appreciate all the questions. To your point, I'd love to get in touch with you afterwards if anyone has any questions about the Crescent Coalition and what we've been doing in the college and career space. Happy to talk after. So.
Thank you so much for having us back. We are here. As I think maybe Winston or someone else asked, how can we get more connected? We are more than happy to come out and talk to groups that you're connected with in community, festivals, Saturday programs, whatever, your church, whatever makes sense. We are definitely willing to make ourselves available to do that. I thank you for your support. This group supported me very early on in my career in Charlotte, and y'all continue to wrap your arms around me. So thank you so much.
Thank you as well for inviting us out. Don't forget, we are trying to get some information about early care education providers, child care providers, so we can go out and listen, figure out where the pain points are, and hopefully advocate on their behalf. So thank you.
I'll just say thank you for a 4th time. I'm born and raised in Charlotte. It's so wonderful to get to come and share with y'all today. about the work that we're doing and hear little bits in y'all's questions about the work that you're doing. We'd love to learn more if you're a nonprofit leader or affiliated with a nonprofit about your organization through these workshops we'll be doing for the Opportunity Compass. We'll send more information about that afterwards and hope to see some of y'all there. But as Sherri said, always happy to connect and learn more outside of that context as well.
Thank you so much. Does anybody in the room want to make an announcement? Announcement.
Hi, everybody. I'm a community organizer with multiple organizations. Right now, I'm representing the redress movement. I wanted to let you all know that Richard Rothstein will be coming back to Charlotte on June 12th. I'm bringing him back here for his second book drop. It's going to be at First Baptist Church West on June 12th at 6:30. I'll make sure to get that flyer to Steve so y'all can add it to y'all's events.
Hey, good morning, everybody. As you know, my name is Gary Young. I just wanted to let you know that we will be doing an announcement this Thursday at Faith Memorial Baptist Church at 12, announcing my candidacy for District 2 City Council this year. So if you want to, I would love to see your support and galvanize that over the course of the next few months through this campaign. But we'll be putting out a press release later today. I'll be going out, but definitely would love to see your smiling faces out there on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. Anyone, Miss Sherri?
Just to remind you that on the 5th of June will be the 3rd annual Juneteenth flag raising at Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is located in 2020 West Sugar Creek Road. We'll be raising the flag at 11:30 a.m.
Thank you so much. One time for our guests. Thank you for the presentation. And again, if you have announcements or you would like to revisit this session, you can go online to Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Forum.org. Charlotte, search on Google, Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Forum, and you will be able to find the video link. Thank you all for attending.